Chris Gloninger, who is live in the field. Chris is in Troy right now. He does have a rundown on some of the latest damage and storm reports that have been coming in. Chris.
Steve, this was one of the first reports we received around 3 o'clock this afternoon, a tree coming down on several houses. As you mentioned, we're on the right front quadrant of Sandy, and that means traditionally the highest wind speeds, like on you're on the western side where we had the heavy rainfall. So we haven't seen this in a while. Even Floyd back in the 90s, we were on the western side with the heavy rainfall. So now we're starting to see those winds really begin to gust even here in the valleys, another strong gust pushing through. And this is what happens when you have several hours worth of gusts getting up to 40 miles per hour. This large limb came off this maple tree, landing into this White House, causing one of the awnings to be pushed in. The other awning fell off. It crushed part of the chain link fence, and it also landed on top of a gazebo and lawn furniture. These are the types of reports that we're getting across the region with these stronger gusts, and it's not so much the speed, maybe up to 60 miles per hour, but it's the duration, as I mentioned. Once you're at hour 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, those tree limbs become weak and those tree roots loosen up so they can easily break off or topple down onto power lines. That's why there are a lot of state of emergencies also in effect throughout the region, and local law enforcement agencies are telling you to stay off the roads during the overnight. When we had these peak winds this afternoon, during daylight you could see if there was a tree down. During the overnight you don't have that luxury, and if the power's out you don't have a lot of the street lights. So that's another concern. If you are planning on doing any traveling during the overnight, use extreme caution. And since this is such a large system, about 500 miles wide, 500 miles worth of tropical storm force wind gusts that go from the Outer Banks of North Carolina all the way up to Maine, you're talking extensive and long-term widespread power outages. So that's why there are crews being called in all the way from Colorado. And that's where our team coverage picks up with Jenna Johnson, how National Grid is dealing with the outages.
Powerful winds are picking up and multiple crews are on standby. National Grid spokesperson Patrick Stella says it's the wind that could keep us in the dark for days.
One thing we can't do is put our crews out there in the middle of this high wind. So we can get them out there to do some work, but we certainly don't want them up in bucket trucks and up working on lines when the winds are over 30 or 40 miles an hour.
For several days, Stella says National Grid has been planning for Sandy's surge. Power trucks traveled from as far as Colorado. They arrived here last night. Now they're waiting and ready to go. And now we're told that even more trucks are on the way.
This is a large storm. That is the difference in this particular storm. It's really going to affect everywhere from Buffalo to Boston, and that's part of our service territory. So what we really plan on doing is seeing what the damage is, and if we have a lot of damage in Albany, say, we can move some more crews over into this area versus another area.
At Lowe's, an emergency supply of generators sold out in just 15 minutes on Saturday. Everywhere you go, the shelves are empty.
There just isn't enough to go around for the entire area. Manufacturers are having a very difficult time meeting the needs. Taking supplies from other stores is what's happening right now.
It's hard to say that you're prepared for everything, but I think we're as prepared as we can be at this point.
Right now, it's a waiting game, with crews ready to be deployed wherever the lights go out. In Albany, Jenna Johnson, CBS 6 News.
We've been crunching the numbers so far throughout the region. National Grid customers, 14,000 residents without power. That's 14,000 customers without power. So obviously that number could be a little bit more depending upon how many people live in that household. So 14,000 customers without power. At this point, National Grid did come to this house. They had to detach the power line so they could chop up the tree, and then I'm sure they'll be back when things quiet down and they tend to some of the larger power outages before they reattach these lines to the main system. Obviously, with wide-ranging effects and with landfall down in southern New Jersey, the coast is taking a beating with Sandy, with strong winds down there. That's bringing in a monster coastal surge of 10 to 15 feet in many areas, inundating shores along Long Island Sound, even into Battery Park in New York City. So the state has had its hands full, and SEMO is that main headquarters where they're overlooking and checking everything and making sure all crews across the state are working and doing what they're supposed to be doing. And that's where we have Brandon Lewis, who is live, and he picks up our team coverage from here. Brandon.
Well, Chris, as you mentioned, this is the command post for most of the state and even some federal agencies. The workers are closely monitoring the conditions deep inside a bunker underneath this building behind me here. Already they've made the decision here to close many of the bridges downstate, and just within the last hour they made the decision to close the Erie Canal system as they fear rising water. Earlier today, they told us that they dispatched 7 swift water rescue teams to help deal with that rising water as they prepare for some of the worst. They've also secured more than 1 million gallons of water and 1 million meals to go wherever is needed. Earlier, officials reiterated what Steve and the rest of our weather team have been saying all weekend long. The winds could cause the most damage. Still, there's a lot of concern about the rising water. If they add, if the time comes to evacuate, be prepared and don't fight with the emergency responders.
And we do expect widespread damage from the trees, so we're trying to ensure people are not putting themselves in harm's way. People need to be careful because when the power goes out, it could be out for a week, 10 days, because of the breadth of the winds of this storm, which go out over 150 miles.
Now, Governor Cuomo ordered the center open 6 days ago, and they have been working all week long. The center will remain open until the storm is over, and then they will continue to work on this from here. Obviously, coming up tonight at 11, we will continue to bring you the latest on the conditions and the latest on any more closures. Please stay with us. Reporting live in Albany, Brandon Lewis, CBS 6 News.
All right, thank you very much, Brandon and Chris. Chris, by the way, mentioned those states of emergency across the area. You can find those on our website, cbs6albany.com. The town of Queens, meantime, has been urging residents in a flood-prone area to relocate. The town issued a voluntary evacuation order for those who live on Miller and Kruger roads. Police there say that it was a dangerous spot for residents and rescuers alike during Irene. A temporary shelter is also set up at the Ravenna Queens Selkirk High School.